Okay, in this video we're going to talk about conversions. Okay, and in order to do those conversions we're going to be talking about English or standard units of measure and metric units of measure. Both types of units will be what we'll be discussing. Okay, now to start out with, I'm going to do something really simple here. And when I say simple, I mean that this is something that you typically see all the time when you are looking at doing conversions, because we talk about converting feet to yards or yards to feet all the time. Now, here's the problem. This is not a difficult problem, but the problem is people often do the wrong thing. So what I do when we do conversions is I teach dimensional analysis, or looking at unit conversions based on flipping fractions, okay? And if you'll learn how to do it in this class, if you're taking a chemistry or physics class and you start doing dimensional analysis, you'll do it exactly like we're going to be doing it here. Okay, here's what we're going to do. In order to do this conversion, we have to know two things. We have to know what we start out with, okay, which quite simply will be 72 feet equals how many yards. So I'm going to start out with my given 72 feet, and notice that I'm going to keep the feet and I'm going to put it over 1. I always start out the same way. This is what I know. It goes over 1. Now, what I'm going to end up with is yards, but I may not get there really quickly. But in this particular instance, I do. Now, my conversion is that 3 feet equals 1 yard. So what I'm going to do with that is I'm going to either make a fraction that looks like 3 feet over 1 yard, or 1 yard over 3 feet. Okay? Now, either one is fine, and the way that I choose the one that I need is that, remember when we did fraction in 205, fractions have the same denominator, the same units on the top and the bottom. If that's the case, then those units will cancel. Like if you started out with something like 3 over 3, just numbers like that, you get 1. Or remember that we could do 2 over 1 times 1 over 2. 1's in the top and 1's in the bottom, so those cancel, because 2 into 2 is 1, 2 into 2 is 1, so I end up with just 1 over 1, or plain old 1. Okay, so the same thing's true here. So basically, whatever this unit is that's up here, it needs to be down here, because I want to be able to cancel it out just like I did these 2's. Now, so I picked the one in my conversion that gives me feet in the denominator, and I just write it down. 3 feet equals 1 yard. And what happens is, what you start out with starts on the top, and what you end up with also ends up on the top. Okay? Now, so the feet is going to cancel, and then you end up with 72 times 1 is 72. Okay? And then 72 divided by 3 on the bottom gives me 24, and I forgot my yards there, so I end up with 24 yards over 1, or just plain old 24 yards. Alright, now we're going to convert kilometers to miles. Now, there's a direct conversion for kilometers to miles, but I'm going to work through more than one conversion. So, like in the problem that we did before, we only had one piece to convert, and now we can't do a direct conversion with any of the conversion factors that we have. So we're going to have to start out with what we know, which would be 52 kilometers, and just as we did before, we're going to put it over 1. Now, I need some kind of conversion that goes to kilometers. Alright, so right here's one. So I've got 1 kilometer equals 1,000 meters. Okay? Now, remember that what we want to do is cancel here. So I'm going to go ahead and do my cancellation as I put my conversion factor down. Alright, now let's see, what do we have that's meters? Okay, that's meters, not miles. That's an M period. So I've got 1 meter equals 100 centimeters. Okay, so now my meters are canceling. Okay, now centimeters, I have 2.54 centimeters. Okay, equals 1 inch. Okay, now, so I've converted from metric here to now standard. Okay, now I have to convert within the standard system from inches to miles. Okay, so let's see what we've got here. I can't jump directly to feet. I've got to use inches. Okay, so I have 12 inches equal 1 foot. And then inches cancel. Now, I've got 2 options here. I know how many feet are in a mile, or I can put in 3 feet in 1 yard. I'm just going to go directly to feet. So I've got 5,280 feet in 1 mile. And so now my feet cancel. Alright, so across the top then, okay, let's turn the calculator here, and let's zoom in just a little bit so you can see what we're doing to multiply here. Let's see if I can move it. Okay, so we're going to be doing, let's clear, 52 times 1,000 times 100 times 1 times 1 times 1. Okay? So across the top, I'm going to back up there and delete that. I just have 52 times 1,000 times 100, and I hit enter, and I end up with 5,200,000 on the top. So basically a 52 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 zeros. Okay, and again, that's miles. Now, in the denominator, let's see here, let's zoom back out a minute. Okay, in the denominator, I've got all these ones, and then I have 2.54 times 12 times 5,280. Okay, so then I get 2.4 times 12 times 5,280, and I get 160,934. 160,934.4. Alright, now, I need to divide these, so I've got 5, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, divided by 1,609,34.4. And I get 32.311. Now, here's the thing about my math lab when you're using that, or basically any kind of online software kind of program. There will be instructions as to what to round to if the answer doesn't come up exactly even. Alright, so in this case, we're going to round to the nearest hundred, which would make 32.31. Okay, now I'm going to use a direct conversion factor here because I also know that 1.6 kilometers or 1.61 kilometers equals 1 mile. Okay, so I know that. So if I start out with what I know to begin with up here, 52 kilometers over 1, and then here I have 1.61 kilometers in 1 mile. Okay, so that I end up with 52 divided by 1.61, and look what it turns out to be. It's 32.298. 32.298. Now notice, if I use and round to the nearest tenth, 32.3, this one is also 32.3. So it depends on what you're instructed to round to. But when you round to tenths, these decimal parts are negligible to the right of each one. So you end up with the same thing. Now, typically in my math lab, they say round to the nearest hundred. So you can see that if you round this one to the nearest hundred, this is going to make this go up 1. So this one's going to give you 32.30, and this one to the nearest hundredth was 32.31. So you'll get 2 different answers. So this can account for error in problems when you do them, or the fact that you miss a problem. Now, if you're taking a test in my math lab, note that I will review problems if you just let me know that you think you worked something correctly, but only on tests. I don't deal with them on homework. Okay, now let's take a look at this one. This is a little different. This is still inside. This is standard units of measure, okay? So we're still talking English system. So we're going to start out with 12 gallons. And we're going to have to do a dimensional analysis. So let's see what we got here. I can use either one of these. I'm just going to start out with the 1 gallon. It's 4 quarts. Okay, now I need something with quarts. So I have 1 quart equals 2 pints. Alright, then I have 1 pint equals 2 cups. And then I have 1 cup equals 8 ounces. Now these are obviously fluid ounces, okay? So my gallons cancel, my quarts cancel, my pints cancel, my cups cancel, and I'm left with ounces. So that to do this one, okay, I'm going to end up doing 12 times 4 times 2 times 2 times 8, which would give me 1,536 ounces. Okay, now think about this. So you have 4 times 2 is 8. 8 times 8 is 64. 64 times 2 is 128. And 128 times 12 is 1,536. So think about that. A gallon is a big unit, an ounce is a tiny unit, like what would be measured with an eyedropper. So it would take lots of those ounces to be a gallon. So just thinking about, does your answer make sense? Okay. Now, I'm going to show you a real quick trick here that's called a metric slider. And let's zoom in just a little bit, not much, because I don't want to make it really grainy so that you can't see. But a metric slider is a pretty cool tool, because if you think about what it means mathematically, it takes 10 of these. In the metric system, everything's based on 10, okay, or powers of 10. So it takes 10 of these to be this, 10 of these to be that, 10 of these to be this, 10 of these to be this, and so forth down to here. Now, what's cool about that is if you were a young child beginning to learn about conversions or how many of one equals something else, it would be much easier to memorize this system because it's standardized. What I've written is a meter, okay? But likewise, I could do liter, which is capacity, or grams, which is mass, okay? And if I look at that, the only thing that changes is this last M. It would change to an L, so this would be DL, CL, ML, or it would be a G, so this would be DG, CG, MG. Other than that, you memorize the slider, and it works every time. So, for example, if I wanted to convert hectometers to millimeters, let's say I've got 6 hectometers. I want to know how many millimeters it is. I start here, and I count the places and the direction. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. So after the 6 is a 0 or a decimal point. So then I want to go 5 places to the right. So I move the decimal 5 places and put in zeros in those bumps to accommodate, so that 6 hectometers would be 600,000 millimeters. Okay, it's a metric slider. It works with everything. Okay, so if I've got hectograms, then hectometers, then, or hectograms, then to get kilograms, it takes 10 hectograms to be 1 kilogram, because everything to the left is 10 bigger than the one to the right of it. Okay. Now, so let's take here and start out with 6 tons. Okay, and we've got 1 ton is 2,000 pounds. Okay, we've got 2.2 pounds equal 1 kilogram. Okay, now we've got 1 kilogram equals 10 hectograms. Okay, so we've got tons canceling, pounds canceling, kilograms canceling, so we're left with hectograms on the top. Alright, so that gives us 6 times 2,000 times 10 on the top, which is 120,000. Okay, on the bottom, 1 times all of that is just 2.2. Alright, and again, that's hectograms. So we're going to divide 120,000 divided by 2.2, and we get 54,545.454. Okay, so if you were asked to round to the nearest tenth, that would be 54,545.5 hectograms.